Veritas Prime drifted silently above the sapphire world of Valen IV, its gleaming structure a testament to Zelvini engineering. For years, the station had known only peace. Cargo vessels, diplomatic cruisers, and the occasional exploration craft were the usual visitors. Patrol shifts became routine to the point of boredom. Even the rookies, freshly graduated from the Defense Academy, often joked about how Veritas Prime was the galaxy's most luxurious prison. Captain Saren didn't mind the quiet. He had seen enough wars in his younger years and was content to command a station where the biggest emergencies involved repairing malfunctioning docking clamps or settling trade disputes. On this day, he expected more of the same. That expectation shattered when the comms console emitted a tone none of the officers had ever heard before, a deep, throbbing alarm that rattled the deck plates. Then the automated system spoke in a voice cold and absolute. Red alert. Incoming human warship. For a moment, no one moved. The words seemed to hang in the air like a heavy mist. Then chaos erupted across the bridge. Officers scrambled to their stations, lights dimmed to combat mode, and shields powered up with a low hum. Training drills from years past kicked in, but there was a notable difference. This wasn't a drill. The fear in the air was real. Saren rose from his command chair, his voice cutting through the panic. Stations report. Confirm the contact. His chief sensor officer, Lieutenant Vera, tapped furiously at her console. Sir, the signal is genuine. One vessel, inbound at sublight speeds. Transponder identifies it as HFY Resolute. Saren felt a chill run down his spine. He had heard the name before, in old war journals and the dusty history lectures back at the Academy. The Resolute was a name that had not crossed Zelvini channels in decades, a ship rumored to be a phantom of humanity's past conflicts, a survivor of battles that no other ship could have endured. What's their distance? Saren asked, keeping his voice level. 2 million kilometers and closing steadily, Vara answered. No communication attempts yet. Weapon systems appear to be powered, but dormant. Dormant, but not disarmed. The implication was clear. Around the bridge, younger officers exchanged uneasy glances. Humanity had not been seen in Dominion space for generations. Most of the younger crew had grown up believing humans were little more than historical myths. Fierce creatures from an untamed past, dangerous but distant. Now, faced with the real thing, theory dissolved into fear. Saren moved to the main viewport. Beyond the station's artificial shield glow, the blackness of space stretched infinite and cold. Somewhere out there, hidden by the distance, a piece of humanity's enduring spirit was approaching. Sound full battle stations, Saren commanded, but hold fire until I give the order. The bridge crew nodded stiffly. They knew the stories. When it came to humans, the greatest mistake was to underestimate them. And in the back of Saren's mind, one truth repeated like a drumbeat. If a human warship had come, it had a purpose, and no force in the galaxy could easily stop it. The name hung in the air like a storm cloud ready to break. HFY Resolute. Captain Saren leaned closer to the main display, eyes narrowing. He tapped a command into his console, pulling up the station's historical files on humanity's old warships. The holographic projector flickered for a moment before stabilizing, revealing an image of the Resolute, a vessel shaped like an arrowhead. Its black hull covered in old battle scars and strange, jagged modifications. The file was sparse, but what it contained made Saren's stomach tighten. The HFY Resolute had been declared missing decades ago, last seen in the chaos of the Orient conflict, a series of brutal battles that had nearly torn apart 3 major civilizations. Back then, the Resolute had survived against fleets far larger than itself, outmaneuvering, outgunning, and outthinking every enemy that stood in its way. Even now, stories about the ship drifted through the galaxy like ghost tales whispered around campfires. Tales of a crew that refused to die, a captain who bent the impossible to his will, and a vessel that somehow became more than the sum of its parts. Sir, Lieutenant Vera said, her voice low, If it's really the Resolute, it's not here by chance. Saren knew she was right. Humans never sent their warships wandering into another power's territory by accident. Every action they took, especially something as bold as this, was calculated. It was either a warning, a request, or the beginning of something much larger. Status on the Resolute's weaponry, Saren asked. Vera shook her head, still powered but not locked onto any target. No aggression shown. That fact was almost more unsettling than if the ship had come in with guns blazing. A hostile ship could be fought. A patient, waiting one meant their enemy was thinking, planning. And humans, history had proven, were very good at thinking. Saren clenched his jaw. His mind raced through possibilities. Could it be a rogue vessel, lost and seeking assistance? No. The Resolute's approach was too controlled. Could it be a scout for a larger force? Unlikely. Humanity had remained relatively isolated after the frontier wars. No, the presence of the Resolute meant something else, something important, something worth risking a war for. Signal all defensive platforms, Saren ordered. Activate long-range interceptors, but do not fire. Prepare to scramble fighter wings at a moment's notice. He knew the station's firepower was formidable, but against the Resolute, it would be like throwing pebbles at a hurricane. As the command deck bustled with activity, Saren's gaze returned to the black void beyond the viewport. Somewhere out there, a ship that should not exist was closing the distance with unwavering certainty. And deep within Saren's seasoned heart, a single thought pulsed louder with every passing second. The Resolute is here with a purpose. And whatever that purpose is, we are not ready for it. Minutes felt like hours as the HSS Resolute closed the distance. Every system on Veritas Prime stood ready. Shields shimmered with full power. Automated defense platforms hovered like silent sentinels around the station. Inside, tension ran so high it was almost a physical force pressing down on the crew. Then, without warning, the communication console flickered to life. Incoming transmission from the Resolute, Lieutenant Vera reported, her voice tight with nerves. Put it through, Captain Saren ordered, stepping forward. The main screen crackled for a moment before clearing. A figure appeared, human, male, and every bit the legend the stories had whispered about. His uniform was old but immaculate, and his gaze burned with the weight of countless battles fought and survived. I am Captain Elias Ward of the human stellar ship Resolute, the man said, voice calm, but carrying a force that made even the seasoned officers of Veritas Prime sit up straighter. We come with intent to parley. Parley, a word from ancient human traditions, signaling a desire to speak before battle, or perhaps to avoid it altogether. Saren measured his words carefully. Captain Ward, you are deep in Dominion space without prior authorization. State your purpose. Ward gave a small, almost respectful nod. We seek an audience, nothing more. Lower your defenses, and no harm will come to your station. Lower defenses. Saren almost laughed out loud. The very idea seemed absurd. Yet as he stared into Ward's unblinking eyes, he realized something unsettling. The human was not bluffing. He was simply telling the truth, as though the outcome was already decided. We can communicate without lowering shields, Saren replied cautiously. Anything you wish to say, you can say from there. There was a pause. For a heartbeat, Saren thought Ward might insist. Instead, the human smiled slightly. A quiet, dangerous smile. Very well, Ward said. I am here to deliver a warning. Something ancient stirs beyond the Orion fracture. Something not even your Dominion fleets are prepared to face. Humanity has seen it before. We survived it once, at great cost. You will not survive it without us. The bridge crew exchanged stunned looks. Ancient threats. The Orion fracture was a dead zone, abandoned after the frontier wars. Nothing had lived there for centuries. Why come to us? Saren demanded. Why not alert the Dominion Council directly? Ward's smile faded, replaced by something colder. Because politics will kill you faster than the enemy ever could. By the time your council finishes debating, it will already be too late. The words hit Saren harder than any missile could have. He knew the truth of them. The Dominion's layers of bureaucracy moved slower than glaciers. Before Saren could reply, another alert sounded, not from the Resolute, but from the outer sensor arrays. Lieutenant Vera gasped. Multiple contacts emerging from the fracture zone, sir. Large ones. Saren turned back to the screen, but Ward had already ended the transmission. The Resolute was moving, not toward Veritas Prime, but toward the incoming threats. For the first time in years, Saren felt something far greater than fear. He felt the rising tide of a war no one had expected. And the humans were already leading the charge. The crew of Veritas Prime scrambled to respond as the first wave of ships appeared on the sensor grids. They weren't human. The species was unfamiliar, their ships jagged and dark like shards of some broken asteroid. There were at least a dozen of them, all moving in perfect unison, as though controlled by a singular intelligence. "Report," Captain Saren barked, his mind racing. He couldn't afford to hesitate now, not with the situation unraveling so quickly. Lieutenant Vera's voice was tight with panic. "Sir, the vessels are moving directly toward the Resolute. They're not responding to hails. Energy signatures air." She stopped mid-sentence, her eyes wide with disbelief. "Weapons are powering up. We're too far out to intervene effectively." Saren's pulse quickened. He glanced at the viewport. Beyond the shimmering shields of Veritas Prime, the Resolute was inching forward, unhurried and steadfast. In contrast, the alien ships moved with terrifying precision, closing in on the human warship like wolves circling prey. "Send a direct transmission to the Resolute," Saren ordered, his tone sharp. "We need to know what we're dealing with." The transmission flickered for a moment before a familiar face appeared on the main screen. It was Captain Ward, as calm as ever, though the tension in his eyes was undeniable. "Captain Ward," Saren said, "we need information. What are we facing?" Ward's eyes never wavered, something that shouldn't exist. These ships are remnants of the Forsaken, an ancient race that once controlled the stars beyond the Orion fracture. They died out eons ago, but their creations survived. And now, they've come back. Saren absorbed the information with grim understanding. The Forsaken were a ghost story in the Dominion's history. Few believed they were real. But then again, humanity had always known how to survive when the impossible was at their doorstep. "I'm not sure how long we can hold them off," Ward continued, his voice steady. "We've been tracking their movements for days. They're not here to negotiate. If they wanted to destroy us, they would have done it already. But they want something specific, and I intend to stop them from getting it." A low hum filled the room as the alien ships drew closer, their weapons now fully charged. The tension on the bridge of Veritas Prime was unbearable. It wasn't just the unknown threat that weighed on Saren now. It was the eerie calm of the human warship in front of him, holding its ground with nothing more than a reputation and the cold knowledge that humans never gave up, not even in the face of certain destruction. "Captain," Lieutenant Vera said, her voice shaking slightly, "the alien ships are entering weapons range. If they attack, we won't be able to defend against them all at once." Saren looked at the main screen, where the black void of space now seemed even darker, the approaching ships like shadows in a nightmare. He had always been taught that a fleet was strongest when it acted in unity, but humanity had shown him something different. The Resolute alone seemed far stronger than it had any right to be. "Prepare for battle," Saren commanded, his voice hard. "But do not fire unless provoked. We wait for the humans to make their move." For the first time, Saren had to admit something to himself. It wasn't just the Resolute he was worried about. It was humanity itself. Because when they fought, they didn't just fight to win. They fought to survive. The bridge of Veritas Prime felt like a pressure cooker, the air thick with anticipation. Every officer, every technician, and every soldier aboard the station knew that the coming moments would determine the fate of not just their station, but possibly the entire Dominion. Outside, the fleet of alien ships had closed in. Their forms were a jagged array of black alien designs that seemed to shift and pulse with a life of their own. Yet, amid this impending danger, it was the Resolute that held everyone's gaze. Captain Saren stood motionless, eyes locked on the screen, waiting. The Resolute had yet to move. No weapons fired, no shields raised. The human warship sat in the cold vacuum of space, an island of calm in the face of an overwhelming threat. Saren could almost feel the weight of history pressing down on him. The humans had always fought like this, slow, patient, methodical. And always, they fought to win. Suddenly, a loud burst of static filled the bridge. The transmission from the Resolute came through again. Captain Saren, Ward's voice cut through the noise, calm as ever. The enemy ships are only the vanguard. What you're about to face is much worse. The Forsaken are not a race. They are a collective intelligence, one that controls these ships like a single organism. Saren's jaw tightened. Are you telling me that these ships are controlled by one mind? Yes, Ward replied. A mind that has been waiting for a long time to awaken. A mind that remembers everything. And it knows what the Resolute can do. Saren felt a cold shiver crawl up his spine. What do you mean by that? The screen flickered, and a strange pattern appeared in the image of the alien ships. For the first time, Saren saw it. A subtle glow from within the ships, faint but unmistakable. The ships were not moving by instinct. They were responding to something. Someone. Ward's voice returned, more urgent now. They're responding to us. To the Resolute's presence. And more importantly, to me. I've faced them before, Saren. I know how they think. But we don't have much time. They've already begun their primary scan. Primary scan. Saren echoed. What does that mean? Ward's expression hardened, and Saren could see the weight of past battles in his eyes. It means they found something they want. Something they believe is here, somewhere in this system. And if they find it, they'll stop at nothing to take it. A chill ran through Saren's body. The station. The resources on Valen IV. The forgotten secrets buried in the system's ancient ruins. Ward's voice broke through his thoughts. We need to act now. I can disable their communications network, but I need you to keep them distracted. Keep them occupied long enough for me to breach their defenses. Saren's pulse raced. The magnitude of the situation was overwhelming. Humanity had faced this before. The Forsaken had been a forgotten enemy, until now. Understood, Saren said, his voice steady despite the storm brewing inside. We'll give you the time you need, but we can't do this alone. I need to know, are we fighting to survive, or are we fighting to win? Ward's eyes met his through the screen. For the first time, Saren saw something that looked almost like a smirk. We fight to win, Captain. Always. The transmission ended, and Saren turned to his crew, his voice now the only anchor in the chaotic storm. Prepare to scramble all fighters. Keep the enemy engaged. They can't get past us, not while the Resolute's on our side. As his orders echoed through the bridge, Saren knew that no matter what happened next, nothing would ever be the same. Humanity had just pulled them all into a fight they weren't ready for, but one they would not lose. The first shot was like a thunderclap in the vacuum of space. A bright flash of light erupted from one of the alien ships, its energy beam striking out at Veritas Prime. It was a warning shot, a message that they weren't here to negotiate. But it also signaled the beginning of a battle that no one aboard the station could have anticipated. Shields holding at 85%. Lieutenant Vera called out, her voice tight with controlled panic. The station's shields had absorbed the brunt of the blast, but Saren knew that the alien ships had only just begun to show their power. Return fire, Saren ordered, his voice calm but edged with urgency. Target their lead ship. The defensive platforms around Veritas Prime fired in unison, bright laser beams streaking across the void, impacting the alien ship. But the alien vessel barely seemed to flinch. It didn't even slow its advance. The technology of the Forsaken was like nothing Saren had ever encountered before. It was as if they were fighting against a ghost, a nightmare that had come to life. On the screen, the Resolute moved into position, engines flaring as it fired a volley of missiles toward the oncoming alien fleet. Each missile impacted with explosive force, sending shockwaves rippling through the enemy ranks. Yet, like the station's defensive fire, the results were underwhelming. The alien ships absorbed the attacks, their hulls shimmering briefly before they recovered. "They're adapting," Vera shouted, her hands flying over the controls. "Their shields are reconfiguring to our attacks. We're not making a dent." Saren cursed under his breath. He had known that the Forsaken would be formidable, but this was beyond anything they had prepared for. Every shot, every strike, seemed to bounce off their enemies with ease, as if the aliens were immune to anything the station could throw at them. "Deploy the fighter wings," Saren ordered, his voice rising. "We need to buy time for the Resolute to get into position." Moments later, the bay doors of Veritas Prime opened, releasing a swarm of sleek fighter crafts into the void. The pilots maneuvered with deadly precision, streaking toward the alien ships, launching their own volleys of missiles and energy bursts. For a moment, it seemed like the fighters might be able to break through, but then the Forsaken ships retaliated. The alien vessels released strange, glowing tendrils that lashed out, ensnaring the fighters in an eerie magnetic grip. One by one, the fighters were dragged toward the alien ships, their engines sputtering in a futile attempt to break free. A few managed to break free, but many others were torn apart, their pilots lost in an instant. "Casualties in the fighter wing," the communications officer called, his voice heavy with dread. "We've lost 20% of our fleet already." Saren's heart clenched. He had expected heavy losses, but seeing it happen so quickly, the brutality of it, shook him to his core. But there was no time for hesitation. The Resolute was still moving, still holding its ground, but it couldn't fight this alone. He turned to Lieutenant Vera. "How long until the enemy reaches the station?" Vera's fingers flew over her console as she ran the calculations. "At their current speed, less than 10 minutes. We need to make our move now." Saren looked at the main viewport, watching as the alien fleet closed in. The distance between Veritas Prime and the Forsaken ships had shrunk to a few kilometers. Their weapons were charging again, and Saren knew that the next attack would be even more devastating. But then, just as hope seemed to flicker out, a new signal appeared on the edge of the sensors. The Resolute. It had begun its assault. Ward's voice crackled over the comms. "Hold your positions. I'm going in." The human warship accelerated, its weapons locking onto the lid Forsaken ship. In an instant, the Resolute unleashed everything it had. Missiles, energy beams, and pulse waves all fired in rapid succession. For the first time, an alien ship faltered, its shields cracking under the sheer force of the barrage. Saren felt a surge of hope. The battle wasn't over yet. If humanity's warship could crack the Forsaken's defenses, perhaps they had a chance. "Everyone, hold steady," Saren commanded, rallying his crew. "We fight together. We fight to win." The battle had escalated into chaos. Veritas Prime's shields flickered, absorbing wave after wave of enemy fire. The alien ships pressed in from all sides, their weapons unleashing deadly pulses of energy that shredded through the fabric of space. The fighter wing had been decimated, its remains scattered in the blackness of space. Yet through it all, one thing remained constant: the Resolute. Despite being outnumbered, despite the overwhelming odds, the human warship held its ground. The massive vessel moved with precise aggression, a testament to the indomitable spirit of humanity. The alien ships were faltering, their once impenetrable shields weakening as the Resolute pounded them with everything it had. But it wasn't enough. Not yet. Captain Saren watched the battle unfold on the main screen. His knuckles were white from gripping the edge of his command chair, his mind racing to find a way to turn the tide in their favor. He had underestimated the strength of the Forsaken's weapons, and now they were paying the price. If they didn't do something soon, there would be nothing left to defend. Then the comms crackled, and Ward's voice cut through the chaos. "Captain Saren, we've made a breakthrough. Their shields are unstable. I'm deploying a disruptor array, but we need you to hold them off just a little longer." Saren's heart surged with hope. "We're with you, Ward. Give us time." Outside the viewport, the Resolute made another aggressive move, weaving through enemy fire with astonishing agility. The alien ships retaliated, their tendrils and energy blasts locking onto the human warship in a desperate attempt to bring it down. But the human ship was too fast, too unpredictable. It darted left and right, unleashing precise strikes that chipped away at the Forsaken's defenses. But the price was high. The Resolute was already taking damage. Its hull was scarred with burn marks, and its weapons seemed to be slowing down, struggling to recharge. "Report," Saren barked, turning toward Vera. Vera's fingers flew over her console as she processed the data. The Resolute's weapons are recharging slowly. They're taking heavy damage. If they don't disable the Forsaken's shield soon, they'll be forced to retreat. A cold wave of fear gripped Saren. He had seen countless battles, but this felt different. Humanity's survival was tied to the success of the Resolute's mission. There was no retreat for them. If the Resolute fell, they would all fall. But then something shifted. A brilliant flash erupted from the Resolute, brighter than the sun. It was a disruptor pulse, a weapon that could disrupt the Forsaken's intricate shields. The energy beam struck the lid Forsaken ship, causing its shields to flicker and collapse. "Now," Ward's voice rang out over the comms, laced with urgency. "Finish them." Saren didn't hesitate. "All remaining fighters, attack now. Hit their weak points." With a final roar, the remaining ships of Veritas Prime's fleet surged forward. The alien ships had been thrown off balance by the pulse, their shields now weak and vulnerable. Veritas Prime's platforms and remaining fighters unleashed a relentless barrage of energy and missiles, targeting the points Ward had identified. It was like striking a vulnerable nerve. The Forsaken ships shuddered, their hulls cracking, shields collapsing under the combined assault. The first of the enemy ships exploded, its fragments scattering in a fiery blaze. One by one, the Forsaken fleet began to fall, their cohesion broken. But the battle was not over. As the alien fleet disintegrated, Saren knew they were just moments away from a final decisive blow. And deep within him, the thought that humanity could still win, against all odds, burned like a fire that could not be quenched. The space around Veritas Prime erupted into a storm of fiery explosions as the Forsaken fleet began to crumble. The alien ships, once imposing and invincible, were now disintegrating in waves. Each ship that fell sent a shockwave through the remaining fleet, shaking their resolve. The battle, which had seemed so hopeless mere minutes ago, was now slipping out of the Forsaken's control. "Status report," Captain Saren demanded, his voice steady as the storm raged outside. Vera quickly checked the data. "The Forsaken fleet is disintegrating, sir. Over half of their ships are destroyed or incapacitated. The remaining ships are retreating. They're heading back toward the Orion fracture." Saren exhaled in relief, but it wasn't over yet. The danger wasn't entirely gone. He knew the Forsaken would regroup. They always did, but for now, they had bought time. "All remaining fighters, return to the station," Saren ordered, his eyes scanning the damage reports. "Prepare for any counterattack, but hold your fire. We've won this round." Outside, the final Forsaken ship disappeared into the dark void, its wreckage scattering across the stars. The remaining alien vessels fled in disarray, a rare sight, an enemy retreating from a battle they had once thought certain to win. Humanity had turned the tide. Ward's voice crackled over the comms again. "Captain Saren, This is Ward. The Forsaken are gone for now. They'll retreat into the fracture, but it's not over. They'll rebuild, and they'll come back. But so will we. Saren nodded, though Ward couldn't see it. We'll be ready. This isn't the end. It's just the beginning. The Resolute had done the impossible. Humanity had done the impossible. They had survived. And now, for the first time, Saren allowed himself a moment of reflection. The sheer audacity of humanity's survival instincts, their relentless drive to push forward no matter the odds, had been their greatest weapon. It wasn't just their technology. It wasn't just their ships or their weapons. It was their unyielding will to never give up. On the bridge of Veritas Prime, the crew shared a moment of quiet triumph. There were no cheers, no celebrations. There was only the knowledge that they had won, against impossible odds. But the war wasn't over. They had a lot of rebuilding to do, and the Forsaken would return. And next time, they would be ready. Saren turned to Vera, his expression resolute. Prepare a full damage report. I want to know everything. We're going to make sure this never happens again. Vera nodded, her face grim. Yes, sir. The repairs will take time, but we'll make it happen. Saren stood tall, facing the viewport, watching the remnants of the Forsaken fleet fade into the distant reaches of space. He had seen enough wars in his time to know that peace was fleeting. The threat would always return, and it was humanity's job to be ready. The Dominion's might would have to evolve, grow, adapt, just like the humans aboard the Resolute. And in that moment, Saren knew that humanity would always be ready. The Forsaken may have been a forgotten enemy, but humanity would never forget this victory. They had proven their strength. Humanity would not fall. Not now. Not ever.